Addiction is the epidemic of our generation. Every 4 minutes, people are overdosing in the U.S. Drugs and alcohol are tearing our families apart. The only way to combat addiction is through proper treatment and customized care. As people are slipping into the grips of addiction, nationwide Banyan Treatment Center facilities stand as the leader in providing growth through recovery. Addiction does not discriminate. Do not let yourself or someone you know become another devastating statistic. Call now, 855-6-BANYAN.
Everyone, thanks for hanging in here all night. My name is Marianna, and I am a person in long-term recovery. I was actually just notified that I officially get to say that now that I've passed the 5-year mark. And for me, that means I haven't had to use a substance or drink since October 4th of 2012. As Honesty said, I do work for Pennsylvania Recovery Organizations Alliance. We are the statewide recovery community organization. And wow, I never thought that I would have the opportunity to stand here and represent that agency and represent recovery for Pennsylvania. I just never thought that this was something that I would be doing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where I came from, my history, but most of what I want to talk about tonight is really the solution. So I will say that I went to rehab for the first time at 13, 23 years ago. At that point, there were no adolescent services available in my community. There were no adolescent services made available to me post-treatment. I'm not even really sure how my parents knew how to get me in treatment, and I didn't even get to go to an adolescent facility. At 13 years old, I was in an adult facility. So now here I stand before you today with 5+ years clean. I'm in my 30s. It took me over 23 years to find my path of recovery. And how I got here was, as a lot of us have shared about earlier, is I was able to create a continuum of care. And note my words that I said I was able to create a continuum of care. A continuum of care was not offered to me. I actually had to advocate for that for myself. And what I want to talk about as we move out of that part of my presentation this evening and into the solution is I really want to challenge people to think about care as we're focusing on care talks beyond a clinical setting. I mean, absolutely a clinical setting can be a place for some people to start their recovery process, but care extends so far beyond that. So as we move into the solution portion, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience, the things that were made available to me and how that affected my recovery process, and the things that were not made available to me and how that affected my recovery process. One of the things that our agency just put out was a document. It is available on our website, a substance use disorder system that supports long-term recovery. So we have a 5-year vision, a vision for a 5-year drug and alcohol treatment system, a recovery care system, and retooling care to meet our needs. That is how I got to where I am today. So the first thing that we propose as we talk about the solution is a substance use disorder care service system that supports long-term recovery. So currently our system supports short episodic treatments. That is why it took me so long. That is one of the contributing factors that took me so long and I really did cause a burden to society to find my recovery process. I had short stints. At times, I wasn't able to get funding beyond detox. I remember the last time I actually went into treatment, I was actually cut off of funding because I had a warrant for my arrest. They were going to send me home. I was very blessed that the facility that I was in offered a scholarship program and scholarshiped me so that I didn't have to go home. Like I said, I think that we need to talk about more than just the clinical setting for care. I appreciate drug court and treatment court programs, but the other part of my story is I requested treatment court, and I was denied because I wasn't an in-county resident. I don't think that that should occur. I understand that that's the way the system is set up, but if we're here and we're talking about the solution, then we need to talk about the changes that need to occur within our system to be part of that solution. Nobody should ever walk into a hospital with cancer and be told, you're not in the right county, you need to go home. It shouldn't happen. But for me, it did. So as we talk about the solution for creating something beyond the short episodic bouts, like my story is, like I said, I advocated for a continuum of care. So I completed an inpatient, 28-day inpatient facility. After that, I advocated for myself to go into a halfway house program. I was there for about 4 to 6 months. After I completed the halfway house program, I went into a well-run recovery house. And I want to stress, well-run recovery house, okay? I went into a well-run recovery house and I stayed there for 15 months. I was a resident turned house manager the last 6 months that I was there. After I left the recovery house, I moved in with a friend who was also in recovery and had multiple years of recovery. So through advocating for myself, I was able to piece together different programs that operated in a step-down process, and I was able to extend my own continuum of care for up to 3 years. But I had to do that for myself. Nobody did that for me. And really, quite frankly, in retrospect, I don't know how I was able to do that. I guess one of the ways I was able to do that is because in South Central Pennsylvania, we have a ton of resources available. And so it wasn't really hard for me to find something because they were all right there in Harrisburg. So the next thing that I want to talk about when we talk about our 5-year vision is a service system that meets the needs of young people. Like I said, I went to rehab for the first time at 13. We are down to almost no treatment facilities in Pennsylvania for adolescents. Parents are sending their babies to other states across the country. I didn't have a student assistance program, but student assistance programs are legislatively required. There's legislation on the books that requires schools to have student assistance programs. It's just not enforced. There were no recovery high schools. There were no young people meetings. There were no resources available to me. You know, there's another movie that follows up on the anonymous people called Generation Found. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. They took a tree out of a sick forest and they put the tree back in the same sick forest. And I stayed sick. I was that tree, because those services weren't available to me. And so I continued to use for another 23 years. The next thing we need to do is we need to build our workforce to serve the next generation. For me, I'm going to college, and I will probably pay for the rest of my life on my student loans. And that's okay. Because what I do get to do through my job is I do get to help to train our future generation of employees through our Certified Recovery Specialist program and our Certified Family Recovery Specialist program that we're launching as well. And why that's important to me is because as we talk about all the things that were and were not made available to me, I had a certified recovery specialist that walked very closely through my first 2 years of recovery with me. So it is important for me, based on my personal experience and how that affected my recovery process and how that made it available to me, that we make that resource available to other individuals. Two more things. I'm going to blow through them, right? Career and employment opportunities, okay? I was really fortunate. I walked into somebody's office because somebody in recovery said, hey, I think this would be a good place for you. I went in, I was on probation, I had papers, I had no experience, I had terrible work history, and somebody gave me a chance. We need more people like that who are willing to hire people who are in recovery, who have a criminal record as a result of their addiction process, to give them an opportunity, because we are contributing members in society. When I found my recovery process, I stopped being a burden to society and I was able to contribute. But somebody had to give me a chance to do that. And that is why I get to stand here today, because somebody gave me a chance. And lastly, like I said, we already touched on it, recovery housing opportunities. I spent 15 months in a recovery house. It was either go to a recovery house or go back to where I was living before, which I knew I wouldn't stay clean because they weren't staying clean. We need well-run, safe places. And that was something that I really took away. And to this day, I continue to try and be in service to the program that gave me a safe place to live, because when I made the decision to go to that house, that was my temporary home, and I had a right to a safe space. We need to make those safe spaces more accessible. Those are the things that were made available to me that helped me in my recovery process, and a few of those things that were not made available to me that, as I said, resulted in me spending another 23 years in active addiction. Thanks for letting me share.